Alright, so let's talk about this color controversy. In another video, I talked about synonyms and how there are many words, many ways to describe or say one thing, or to describe or say something else, and many specific words to describe only specific things to whatever context is being said. With the color controversy, this is one of the topics that also crossed my mind about having more than one way to say a different color or a different thing. And that's one thing I want to talk about with the colors. I know there are a lot of floating videos out there on YouTube that talk about the colors and teach you and stuff like that, so here's mine to add to the collection. Right, the ones that I wrote on this side, the left side, are the most commonly used, without a doubt, like they're more commonly used words for the actual color itself. So let's start. And the one on the right side I will explain after this. So the left side we have yellow, which is dalag, right? Dalag. Red, as some of you know, is pula. White is puti. Black is itom. Those are common ones that you will hear, and without a doubt, those will probably remain. They'll probably remain consistent throughout the whole years and such like that, right? So those are just really common basic colors. Gray, we have abohon, right? Abohon is more common, although I wrote in parentheses because gris, people will also say this, but it's rare. Gris, you will hear this, but it's rare. It's the Spanish borrowed word for gray. But abohon is something that I see more often than gris. Abohon, which is abohon comes from the word abo, and abo means the ash. Like after something has been burned, it's ash, the ash colored, something that's ashy or ash colored. Because when you see ashes in a pile, it is gray. So we describe that color as abohon, right? Gray. Brown, tabonon. Tabonon. I also wrote in parentheses again, like gray, cape. Cape because in Spanish, again, it's that borrowed word. It's that brownish color, cape, like a coffee, like the brownish coffee color, cape. So cape also means coffee in Cebuano, and it's like a brown kind of coffee looking thing, right? So cape is coffee, but we also can use it to describe brown. However, it's also rare. The bonon is something that you probably see more. It's more like the color of like the tree trunk, something like that. The bonon, right? To mean brown. So that's it for this side. For the right side, all right, let's start with the first one, blue, right? The one I hear more is azul, but the indigenous, more deeper Cebuano word is bughaw. Bughaw. Azul is more commonly used than bughaw. I don't hear bughaw a lot. At least this is just me. I hear azul more used more when I hear speakers. But again, it's just me, so that's why I put bughaw in parentheses, because to me, azul sounds like it's more used commonly in speech and in public. The same thing with verde, with green, right? With verde, right? But I wrote these on this side of the board because azul and verde are both borrowed from Spanish, and they're both Spanish derived words that it's kind of interesting how to see, like, you see a more commonly used Spanish derived word than a native or indigenous derived word. Verde is the one I hear a lot more, and it's the one I actually use, verde, to be honest. Lunhao, I've never heard of this. Lunhao, I've never used this, but I mean, apparently it also means green. I'm putting it there with bughao too because I've never heard of bughao, and just me personally, I've never heard of bughao. I use azul and I use verde. Lunhao and bughao apparently exist. I've read I've read in places where they use bughao, but I've just never heard it in person, and I've never heard of lunhao at all. Pink is rosa. That I hear. Um, but again, like with the Cebuano speakers who were never educated in their language, they would probably just use the English word pink and speak Ceblish, right? So rosa is pink. And then the last two is just crazy, right? This is really where a lot of craziness comes from. So purple, um, we have like different types of purple. I guess it depends on the shade of purple I'm into. But to me, I use violeta personally, which is like violet. But violet can fall under the tint of purple, and so does lila, which I don't know. I hear violeta and lila more so than tapol or ube or morado or I don't know. Just so many ways to say this kind of color, right? This hue, like this purplish kind of indigo, kind of like purple root color. Like tapole is like those tapole and ube. They're like really purplish kind of looking roots and vegetable root kind of things. But lila, violeta, morado, they're all borrowed from the Spanish word, which is like purple or lilac or violet or that kind of stuff. So I use those two with the asterisk, or I hear lila and I hear violeta sometimes. If I would personally use violeta myself just to describe something that's purplish violet colored kind of a deal. But again, like that's where just a whole bunch of mess comes in because people will say one thing and say another thing, or they'll just use an English word purple, which I highly discourage. The last one is orange. The one I read is like kahel. The one I see when I read more is kahel. It's the one I use. Um, I think this is just me, but I think like there's a borrowed word from Tagalog called dalandan, which also is an orange. Is like the fruit. Kahel is also fruit, which is the fruit, the orange fruit, which we use to describe the orange color. But dalandan, I think, is being borrowed to Cebuano. I'm not quite sure, but I mean, I might have heard it somewhere in the past. Um, Maraag, I've never heard of maraag, but apparently it means orange, and I don't know. I guess there's also another way that starts with a P, but it's just I guess they're just like rare that I don't hear them often. But kahel is the one I personally use. And yeah, and there are two ways of saying color again because of the Spanish borrowed word. So color, right, from the Spanish color, color, but the native way of saying it is bulok, right? Bulok means color, which means color, right? So it's just a crazy color controversy that I like to say.